Thank you.
Hi. Yes. Welcome to another episode of Unveiling Value, Exploring Inherent Worth Within Systems, Structures, and Society. I'm Allison Castle. I am the founder of the Inherent Worth Connection. And today I am so fortunate to be joined by Karen Cooney. And Karen has done so many things in her career. I just want to share a few of the many things that she's been involved in. She spent 32 years in HUD housing, which I'm hoping we get to chat about a bit during this call. Um, Also, she's currently serving as a member of our local school board. It has been involved with League of Women Voters and is also on the board of the Friends of the Arts Center. So, huge supporter of the arts in our community. So, Karen, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. I look forward to all of it.
Awesome. So, I want to start off our conversation by just asking you, how do you define worth?
Worth to me has it goes deep from things that I learned from childhood. And it really comes down to feeling comfortable with yourself is probably the best way of describing it. And a lot of folks did not learn that. And if they learned it, they took it a lot of times the wrong way, rather than how they can use it to the benefit of themselves.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, would you be willing to share a time when maybe you struggled with your worth or questioned your worthiness?
Yeah, I do a lot of times. I use a lot of sports analogies, so this actually does fall underneath that category. Uh, Believe it or not, I'm 70 years old now, but at one point in time, I was young and fit, and I was on fast pitch softball, and I was a catcher. And I actually was pretty darn good at it. In fact, my brothers, when they were playing their sports, my dad always went to theirs. Didn't always come to mine, and my sisters. But the game in particular that he did come to, I caught probably the best game I had ever caught and did some pretty good batting. Afterwards, I walked up to him and I'm thinking, there's not too much he can really say about this. And he looked at me and he said, that triple should have been a home run. You didn't run fast enough. And, it was I dropped my gym bag. I remember that, and he didn't do it with a smile or anything that way. And what I had to learn many years later was that was his way of pushing me. As a teenager, young adult, I didn't necessarily see that, but he was trying to push me because he didn't have a lot of things as he grew up. And he did have to fight through a lot of self-worth problems and things in a large family with a single mom and everything. And so he wasn't good at expressing it the right way. And so it took me a long time to really come up with where my self-worth was in a lot of different factors due to that type of a thing. And to
Mhm.
show you how I was able to do that a little differently than with my daughter is I was her coach playing softball, pardon me, soccer. And I had her and one of her friends in the car with me, both girls really good at playing soccer. And I started to be able to tell them about how good, that they played. And then all of a sudden they both went, but, and I had to stop and I go, what do you mean, but? And they said, you always have a but. And I had to think about that for a moment. And then it brought back what my dad had said to me. And I realized that what I was doing was, yes, trying to help them to get better. But what I always made sure I did first was tell them the good as in what they did. And then the but was meant to be able to help them continue to work on their own self-worth.
Mhm. Wow, that's amazing that you were able to have that shift with how you raised your daughter, noticing, obviously at the time when your dad was like, you didn't run fast enough. Like, that's just a shot to your confidence and worth,
Yeah,
and not understanding maybe the perspective of where he was coming from. That he was really like, in his mind, had your best interest in heart. He wanted you to help you improve and get better, but failing to maybe recognize or congratulate you on the good parts
yeah,
of the
yeah.
game that you played. So that's beautiful how you transitioned and really kind of built an understanding of where he was coming from, and created that space where you got to share and made sure you really promoted the positives with
Mhm.
your daughter before throwing in the, and here's how you can improve.
Right. And I think, if I had not had my daughter, I'm not sure if I would have gotten that. But
Yeah.
after having her, it made me realize why he was doing, what he had done. I wish
Mhm.
he could have been able to express it in a different way. But he came from an era that was just not done that way. And so I was determined to make sure that I didn't follow that same path.
Yeah, that's I just want to say that is so impressive, because there are a lot of times that whatever we experience as a child, we do just tend to follow um that same cycle, and kind of, revisit it with our children and then grandchildren and whatever. So that I mean, that takes a lot of self-awareness for you
Mhm.
to make that shift, and gain that understanding of what it meant for you, what it meant for him, and how you could do it better with your child. So
Yeah.
that's really amazing. I just am very impressed by that whole thing, especially again, like when you're a teenager and because I felt like the same way with sports. When I would play, I felt like I all the time it felt like, okay, this is how you can improve, but
Mhm.
maybe it was like, hey, can you tell me like what I did well too? Because that would feel really good.
Yeah. I can tell you that I definitely got the eye roll from both of the girls in the back seat when they said that. But yeah. And to this day, my daughter's 39, and to this day, she does that eye roll at me because I still do the butt at her.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. For my dad, it was always, he liked to use the word potential. Um,
Ah,
and that actually, so he knows this, but that ended up becoming like a really almost like a dirty word for me. So I hated that word so much, because to me, potential meant you aren't there yet. And like, so every
yes.
time I had potential, it's like I wasn't good enough yet. I
Mm.
wasn't good enough yet. And he's like, no, 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 that's not what I meant by that.
Yeah. He was trying to be kind at what stage you were at. And
Mhm.
yes, I probably would have done the same thing as in just,
Yeah.
at that stage of your life too, makes a
Yep.
difference.
Yeah. And it's still, I mean, it's still kind of a joke between us now too. So he'll use that
I'll have to
word
remember that.
just to get under my skin. Yeah, throw it out there sometime when you see him, see what happens.
I will. I will. Hey, John, you have some potential
You
yet.
have some great potential, John. Yeah.
Thank
You'll get there someday. I love that. Thank you for sharing that story.
you.
And I'd love to, if you're willing to dive into, I really think all your years of experience with HUD housing would be just a really interesting discussion point when we talk about worth. So I'm curious if you'd be willing to share a little bit about what that experience was like, working for HUD housing, and maybe how it translated to worth, the worth of the people that you were helping with housing. It could be maybe with even within that structure of, your coworkers and managers, bosses, who worked under you. Yeah, anything that you think might be interesting to share about your time with HUD housing and how it relates to worth.
Yeah, there is, I used to always say, after I retire, there's probably a book that I could write, but without actually using the real names, type
Of
thing.
course, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. But on a more serious note with it, one of the things I guess again has back to how the worth happened to me as a teenager, and then doing long before Katie was into sports and stuff. Uh, Starting my process on the HUD housing was an interesting time. The reason I had taken the job was because I I needed money is really
Hmm.
what it was. And it was a full-time job with insurance and everything because Katie had just been born like 6 months before that. And
Yeah.
and so I saw it as an opportunity.
Hmm.
But it didn't become long before I could see some of the hurt and the pain and the process that a lot of the folks go through, and sometimes the humiliation that was done because of it. Um, but I actually understood that. Why? Because technically, when I was pregnant with Katie, I had not one, but two part-time jobs. But it was
Yeah.
within the same agency, but they didn't have money to take and make it full-time, which meant they could have given me benefits.
Oh,
And
sure.
so, guess what? I had her on state papers, as they used to call.
Mm.
I actually was on what is now called with the Medicaid. And
Yeah.
so I understood what that part of the process took. Here I was helping people that was doing the same as what I had had. And so it quite quickly allowed me to feel the empathy to understand what was going on. And I would just not just talk to people as in, head down, taking information, okay, there you go, and get them out the door. I always took the time to make sure not only did I know their names, of course, but as in something going on with their kids or their family, or something. The other part of that becomes if you make somebody feel at ease, they're going
Hmm.
to feel at ease with you, and then you're going to get a better response to any of your information because sometimes people that come in to the office, they would feel their guard up because
Yeah, of
it
course.
was, because they didn't know what to expect and they have already been, oh, astronauts. I'm trying to think of the word I want to use, but they're always on guard. They're always on guard because they don't know the negative that could end up coming at them. Uh,
Hmm.
because and sometimes people don't even have to say anything and they can feel that negative energy. And so
Right.
I felt it was important that they didn't feel that instead that they knew that I was there in which to help them. And just so you know, long before they ever had what's called self-sufficiency program, which was a part of HUD, uh, I was doing it anyway. I was
Hmm.
doing it, I would give them information of where else that they could go. I was talking to the people that work for community services and the other medical areas and stuff. So if there was something they needed, I made sure I got them to it. And how did I do that? I talked to those people from those agencies. And so I got to know some of those people quite intimately. And in fact, to this day, I have good friends from those. And in fact, we're going to Door County coming up here, to be exact. So it shows
Hmm.
you that if you treat people right, they stay with you. And so, with that in mind, I can tell you, this is off a little bit from the Worth area, but it still is. Is I had a young lady that when she came to see me, she said, uh, well, I was in the emergency room this weekend. I told them that I was going to kill myself. And I knew her well enough that I could just basically say, and why did you do that? And I knew by the look on her face, she was not planning on killing herself. But what it was it was the only way she could get her medicines faster because she had ran out of her medicine and she was not capable because of being on Medicaid about getting it by X amount of date and stuff. Um,
Wow.
yeah. And so she knew how to play it if she needed to. She had a real problem with her self-worth. It was something that I had to work with her from the whole time that I worked with her on the self-sufficiency program. And in fact, I saw her here, it was probably about 6 months ago. And she automatically came up to me and say, "Hey, Karen, how's it going?" And she then automatically started rattling off to me what's going on in her life now. And
Mm,
you could see a difference in her. She could see a little bit of pride in what she was able to take and do for herself. And she thanked me again for sticking with her on
yeah.
it. And to me, that is the ultimate goal, is to make sure that you allow people to find their goals.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow, that is so amazing. And I think something that really just struck me about what you shared, and you know, anybody be so lucky to have you work with them in
Oh,
that process with HUD. Because
thank you.
just like you said, you took the time to get to know them, you helped them with other resources when that wasn't really your job.
Mhm.
You could have just done the bare minimum for the job that you had, but you took the time to get to know the people. And um, I think that's such an interesting point, that how our own worth is so dependent. Like it doesn't, I said this when I had the episode with my husband, is worth doesn't happen in a bubble.
Mhm.
It takes other people seeing your worthiness
Yep.
for you to remember, or when you look in the mirror, say, oh yeah, I really like I really do have worth. Like
Yes.
I deserve to be here. I deserve to have shelter over my head. I deserve to have the medical care I need. It's so.
I like how you put that. Pardon me, but I like how you put that because I deserve.
Mhm.
There's just so many people out there that just don't feel that they deserve because they have been trodden on for so long
Right.
that it's hard for them to be able to even look in that mirror. And we've got to figure out a way to help folks to do that better.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it does take, people like you that they meet in those type of situations. Because I imagine when they come in the doors to apply for HUD housing, some of them are in a pretty low place. Um,
They are.
yeah, maybe a desperate place, survival mode. I would imagine that was a lot of the people you dealt with, if not all of the people you dealt with, were in a really difficult place, a really low place in their life.
Well, the one thing that a lot of people actually do not understand about with the housing part of it is that folks that were in my door were not they were elderly,
Mhm.
disabled, and then there was families, and a good portion of all those families, they were working, but it just wasn't
Right.
enough. There was very few people I would actually label that they just didn't know how to function, enough to do things. And sometimes those are the ones that I really had to work with the most,
Mhm.
just to try to get them to feel that, they have a path. They just need to be able to see that path.
Mhm. Yeah. And they probably never had the opportunity to see that path before. I assume it was probably very overgrown.
Yeah, yeah,
And
because you,
yeah.
you got to think about it from the standpoint whenever you would see something, you don't know like what their dad was like to them, like how I had with my
Sure.
dad and stuff. You don't know. You're only seeing them at that snapshot of time of what's going on. And there's times that I could see that people come in that their shoulders were almost like, down and
Mhm.
they're there because they have to and everything else. And sometimes I like to think that what my job was to do that by the time they left with me, I walk them back out. I walk them
Yeah.
back out. I don't just say, and just kind of chat, on the way back out and stuff, so that they have that lift, just even if it's only for a few minutes or whatever, they
Mm.
get that chance for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. It's so important. Because just like you said, you don't know what that person's experience was before they came through your doors.
Yeah.
And what you might be the first person that ever was a supportive voice in their life, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
It's
possibly, possibly. But I'd like to think then it opens the door so I'm not the last one. In other words, it
exactly.
allows them to
Yeah.
see that there's other people out there that can be that supportive person for them because they might have been closed off, enough that they're not actually seeing that there's other people out there that could help them.
Yeah, just like you said, they are probably very protective
Mhm.
because they don't know they've had enough. Probably, again, we don't know their true what their experience has been, but it may indicate that they've had some experience where they've been taken advantage of, or yeah, just have had negative relationships that haven't ended well and have ended negatively. So for you to be, yeah, be up that maybe that first positive person
Yeah,
that they've experienced could open the door for um, other positive experiences to come their way.
yeah, yeah. I have another quick story from another angle that
Yeah.
has really stayed with me, and it's not from the HUD area. It's actually years ago. I used to do a choreograph for the Junior Miss pageants,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I had a one year I had, let's just say there was a young lady that she was tall, she was lanky, she was really not technically what you would call somebody that normally you would see in a pageant like this. But her mother was the one that had kind of signed her up in that because she had pulled me to the side. She says, I need her to feel better about herself. I need her
Mm,
to see that she can shine. And I'm like, understood. Well, there is also then, of course, other gals in the pageant that, quite good in a number of ways. Well, then one gal in particular was shorter, but compared to her, tall part and everything. So I called them tall and short, in my brain, anyway.
right.
And short though was very athletic, very good at what she was able to take and do. And there was a one part where we had a kick line. Well, in the way I had to position everybody in there in that kick line, in the end, tall and short ended up right next to each other. And Tall was constantly having a hard time with even getting that kick line, getting her legs up to kick right. And then she would pull on Short and what to do, with it and that.
Mhm.
And finally, Short at one time during a break came over to me and she's going, Can you please move her? Please move her. And she says that she's making it terrible for me and, how they, the whole bit, right? And I just very calmly looked at her and I said, sure, I understand what you're saying, but you do realize if I move her, you're causing the same problem for somebody else.
Mhm.
Wouldn't it be easier if we worked with her to help her to get better at what she does? And besides, you can shine on your own.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she was just like, ah, and kind of walked away. And so
Right.
I went over to Tall and I just did give her some pointers on how to be able to, do better and stuff. And by the end of the pageant, two things had happened. One was Tall was actually the one that got the award for the uh, should remember the name of it, but like the brightest one there or something, how they do, you know.
Yeah.
And so I knew that was just such an added bonus, and especially for Mom too, and the look on her face with that. But then Short, of course, actually won the pageant.
Oh.
And, which is fun, with all of that. And she come over to me afterwards and gave me the biggest hug. And she said the thing that I will always remember. She says, thank you for not moving her from me.
Mm.
She then understood what that meant, that she herself had to have her own self-worth. She herself had to be able to figure out how she was going to shine, comparably. And then she ended up having compassionate for tall. Well,
Yeah,
in the end, they both won.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that story. And I think it's a really good example of for that moment, like Short was a very just very self-centered in a way.
Yeah, she
You know,
was.
she
Yeah.
was she was just looking out for herself.
Mhm.
And it's like, man, look what happens when you decide to, just like you said, show compassion, empathy for another person. It doesn't take away from your light. It may even make it brighter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I have not seen Short, actually, or tall either since that period of time, but I would love to. I would love to
Yeah, I'd be
find
so
out,
curious, right? Yeah.
yes, how these young women, grew from there.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing is a lot of times that's can happen. When we impact somebody's life, one way or another, we're not necessarily privy to what happens to them,
Sure.
later. See how it turns out. So we can only take how do I say joy in it as in what we can do at the moment.
Hmm. Yeah. I think it's when we do our best. Um, we're doing the best we can, and the impact that we have on somebody, yeah, we may never know,
Mhm.
but if it
Helps you that
feels,
too. Yeah.
yeah, if it feels good and right, and that we're being honest and authentic and true and kind, and it's like there really isn't, it doesn't feel like there's a way you can go wrong
Yeah.
with bringing those.
Well, let's just know that for me anyway, if like say if I've had a bad day for whatever reason, and my bad day compared to other people's bad day is probably not that bad, but just
Right.
because of something, we all get those, something goes wrong. And and then if I'm short with somebody and I don't mean to be, I feel bad. I find
Yeah.
myself then almost gut feeling with it and have to go back to that person at another time and say, I'm really sorry, that I did that. Because then, not I worry about what impact that does on them,
Mhm.
well known in the end, it's not a good impact on me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You feel it. Yeah. It doesn't let go of you
Mhm.
either. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you don't want to be, I mean, from what it sounds like, it's like you don't want to be that type of person that
Yeah.
takes out your bad day on somebody else. And
Yeah,
yeah.
sometimes I have to say when I introduce myself, I say, "Hi, I'm Karen. I'm the good Karen." And things that
All right.
there's a lot of Karens we see on all the YouTube stuff and everything nowadays.
Yeah, they took that name
So
and made it. Yeah.
I sometimes I just say, well, if nothing else, it's a good laugh when I say it. But unfortunately, there are uh, a lot of Karens out there that don't pay attention to somebody else's self-worth, let alone I really worry about their own self-worth for that matter.
I would agree because I do think um, people that are maybe chronically unkind to others and don't feel that sense of guilt, remorse
Mhm.
from doing it, then it would lend to question, should they be working on their own self-worth?
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that mean? And I know you attended the one workshop I did where we looked at kind of the masks or the roles that we play to try to, it's like to try to fill up our self-worth.
Yes.
It's like, what roles do we play? How do we act out in relationships and experiences to build ourselves up?
Mhm.
And sometimes if it's in a unhealthy way, it is, putting other people down or being unkind to other people that we artificially build up our own self-worth, and it's not true self-worth. It's
No.
just the image of maybe what we believe at the time
Mhm.
make us
Mhm.
look better.
Yes, and I think that's sometimes what people have a tendency to do is they just want to look better in somebody else's eyes. But
Yeah.
then when they look in the mirror,
Yeah. How does it feel then?
feedback,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine some of those people are, and I won't say that I've never done it. I think we're all human, so we all have our times where we don't treat people kindly, don't treat ourselves kindly. But in my experience, if your self-worth is very superficial, if you're measuring it by bank account position, material items, things like that, when you look in the mirror, you probably are one of your own worst critics as well.
Yeah.
Like, why do I have those wrinkles there? Or why is, just
Mhm.
constantly judging yourself. Why don't I have this? Why am I not successful enough at this? And it's like the way we treat ourselves, I think sometimes just reflects out to others. It's like this boomerang effect.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I really wonder with those people how unhappy they really are,
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so when I see somebody that you can just tell from the verbiage that uh there must be some baggage or something there. Because then I go back to the part about I don't know what's happened with them, maybe even the day before or whatever, you know. And so for at the moment when I've got them captured in front of me, then I have to make a decision, how am I going to treat them, even if they are trying to treat me in a very disrespectful way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because trust me, I've had that. And
I bet.
yeah, one thing I jokingly say it's a good thing I've had a few years of theater experience because then I can keep a nice little smile or whatever on my face. And inside, I'm trying not to have my eyeballs crossed and thinking, why are they saying things that way? You know, and so, but by doing that and by staying calm, I guess is what I really need to say, by staying calm when they are escalating,
Hmm.
in a conversation or that. Uh, Actually, I had somebody that made them actually more angry that I actually was staying calm because they wanted me so much to be just
Yeah.
as angry as them. And
Yes.
I don't see very much good that comes out of anger,
Yeah.
in itself, because that just to me it's a disguise for something else. And so it's actually trying to find out what that something else is, and does that end up go back to again, where is their worth? Where's what's going on, with them and stuff. And so I try
Hmm.
my best to, I guess, disarm is, I guess, the best way when I get an approach from uh, a negative approach like that.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful. I think that's a really important piece. A really important piece of the work of inherent worth is it's, you know, the huge piece of it is we have to see it in ourselves before we can see it in other people, truly. And then how do we take that concept, that truth that everyone is inherently worthy,
Mm.
and really use it in our relationships and how we communicate with people? And I think what you're saying expresses that so well. If somebody is coming at you, at me, at anybody from a place of whether it's anger, negativity,
Right.
and we don't know, again, like you said, we don't know what their day's been like. We don't know what their life experience has been like, but we know something that feels true for them is they're upset about something. And the way we respond is so important to honoring, I mean, really honoring their experience
Mm.
and then hoping to help them, um, maybe come down to more of a calm place where we can have reasonable communication, civil communication,
Yeah.
um, actually help each other,
Yeah. Yeah.
support
Because
each other.
otherwise, my clarity, I guess I should say, as in what that conversation, could be, we could be lost. and then I say something that is not good, and then I end up feeling bad because what I've said to somebody in a response that I probably shouldn't have said because of it. And so I just I just always try to remember that uh, uh, we're not in each other's brains. I guess
Yeah.
that's the easiest way
True.
to say it. We're not
Mhm.
in each other's brains, so we don't have all that collectiveness of what's happened, up until that moment. And so anything that we can do to help that clarity is, to me, it's worth it to me, my
Mhm.
own, like you say, inherent worth to feel that I can be as best that I can on any communication level.
Mhm. Right. Right. I think that's a key piece too, is um part of I think part of recognizing inherent worth in ourselves and others is recognizing also that we're not ever going to be perfect because we're human beings. So it's knowing we're doing the best we can in the moment that we can with the resources we have. Um, and if we continue to act from that place, I think that that's a real big key to um, to the inherent worth piece and to having again that communication that you've learned so well to do with people.
Yeah. Yeah. As anything, it's a trial and error. If you think
Yeah.
about it, it's
Yeah.
kind of like with your kids, at one point in time, what kind of communication you needed to do with them when they were a certain age. And then as they grew, and especially by teenage years, nothing you said anyway would work. you know yeah, and finally I think I'm back to with Katie. I think I'm finally back to that she thinks I'm okay. That mom might actually know a few things, so I appreciate you thinking that I may know a few things.
Oh,
But
I know you know a few things.
yeah. So I try to think of that in anybody that I'm talking to, you also have to try to remember what stage of life that they are in, where may have had enough time to have the growth that they need. Uh,
Mhm.
and the ones that I guess in a manner of speaking, I worries the most on is those that are older individuals. Some of the people that I saw when I was with the HUD agency, the elderly, that was some of my hardest population because there were so many of them that you could tell that they never had much of any self-worth, any self-esteem, any love, any appreciation, care, confidence, all of it. Uh,
Yeah.
they never really had that in their life. And so those are the ones that especially I would try to make sure I make time with, a little bit extra. The last couple years that I worked, one of the years I got switched over to helping out at Clark House with the elderly population. So I would go out, sit with them at lunchtime, and just gab, about anything, and it was fun, and it really made a difference. Actually, for me, it made me feel good that
Of
they thought
course.
of me as a friend, at their age, and stuff too. And
Mhm.
yeah, so it's I guess comes back to trying to also think about where do you think that people are at in their own stages of life.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's just purely about human connection.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's just about being present with somebody,
yeah,
which is again what you've done, what you did while you were working with HUD, what you did for those people in the Clark House, just being present with somebody and allowing them to talk,
yeah,
be who they are, just presence.
yeah,
I think that's super important. And I think it's interesting how maybe we're missing that, especially in this day and age. I mean, you and I are not in the same room right now. It's like everything is online on Zoom.
yeah,
I mean, not as much now, thankfully, but social media, all the things like I feel like a lot of times we're missing that true human connection that is so key. Um, that presence that's so key to worthiness. Like how often are we distracted on our phones or devices when even,
Mhm.
we're out to dinner with friends or we're in family dinners or any spaces, how often is the phone sitting next to you and you're like, oh, ding, I heard something, I better check my phone, even though
Yeah.
in a space where I really should be just enjoying the people I'm with.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually a funny one comes to mind is being at a school board meeting, my phone was sitting right by me. And
Mm-hmm.
then what were we actually talking about right at that point in time was somebody mentioned about our phone policy and about how the kids can't have the phone, while they're at school. And I went, oh, yeah. So what did I do? I literally folded up my phone case and I set it down uh, uh, underneath the bench, so to speak. And so that I'm, yes, present, for what's going on. And
Yeah.
yeah, and and that's part of the other things that too is because we ask different folks to do certain things, but if we're not going to do the same thing ourselves, where does that show how not only is our connection with things is how can they trust us, with
Mm,
things. And so that's another part of when you're talking to people and communication with people is they got to feel as if they can trust you to be able to do. Um, and so yeah, so just from the different bits and pieces, what I would say, pardon me, I'm rattling on here, but what
no, you're great.
what I would do is when somebody'd come in to see me in the head office that I hadn't met really before, I says, you know what? Let's just go sit here for a couple minutes. I'm going to ask you some questions. Some of them are going to be sounding really strange why I'm asking you them, but trust me, in the end, it'll all pull together. And so some of the questions I would ask was not anything to do with anything I had to write down on paper, but it was something that was gathering information and how sometimes people would tell you things could make a
Yeah.
difference on how you
Mm,
could tell where they're at, where's their headspace, even at. And
yeah.
so that it would allow me to know how to, move forward, with them. And so maybe then the next time I saw them, I would remember something from, what our first conversation was and stuff. And so sometimes it's just a matter of saying more than how are you? Because I mean, although that's a wonderful greeting, that really doesn't say it. It really doesn't say what you need to know about somebody
Hmm.
and
Right. And that can be a
where they're
very surface, yeah, a very surface question, right? Because it's pretty easy to say like, oh, fine,
yeah.
we're good,
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, do
Yeah.
you
But
really want to know?
right, right. You may be opening a can of worms here.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. But beautiful. I mean, that's a perfect example. What you're saying is like you really built rapport
Mhm.
with the people you're working with. And I love how and this is actually something we learn in like the coaching education that I've had is doing a little just kind of almost like a preview or prefacing
Yeah,
like the questions. You're like, so some of these questions are gonna maybe sound kind of odd, maybe not make sense right away, but you know, just keep with me and
yeah,
it'll all come together. That does amazing things
yeah.
to calm, like if somebody's in that fight or flight
Yep,
mode or their nervous system's a little elevated, just having that kind of prepper, like just those words of, okay, I'm going to give you a little preview of what we're going to do.
yeah,
It's amazing what a
yeah,
change that makes. And I love that you used that, built that rapport with those people. Again, so it's so obvious and easy for me to see
yeah,
how the people that got to work with you walked away with such an amazing experience and knowing that somebody was really in their corner.
yeah. Well, the thing of it is though, Allison, I was chastised a little bit for the amount of time that I would take with folks.
Oh,
And yeah, yeah. But then I'd have to say, did I get the results we needed? And in the end, it wouldn't necessarily take me as long to do the work that I needed to do for the folks because I was
mhm,
able to gather the information and at the same time, make them feel comfortable. And I always made sure that I had my appointments scheduled at a certain amount of time uh, in between. So if an appointment actually ran over, I wasn't then making a problem for another appointment, and
Yeah,
stuff, because you learned pretty fast that uh, some appointments are going to take longer than others
of
because
course.
of what all that was needed to be able to discuss, and that. And otherwise it could have taken two different appointments. Here, what I did is I was able to concise. So, from that part of the business side of it, I was able to show what the difference of what I was doing was making. But then from the emotional side of it and what to be able to help folks that said, I'm taking the time to talk with you today
Right.
and unfortunately, there are many times with many of our agencies, help agencies, it doesn't even have to be help agencies, just agencies, period. They don't take the time.
Yeah.
And, we can walk away being very, very frustrated when we get done from talking with folks. And we shouldn't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an important point. And I think just like you said, in agencies, and when you were saying that, I was thinking a little bit in like the healthcare realm too, how doctors have the expectation many times of seeing a certain number of patients a day.
Yep.
Well, that leaves appointments compressed and maybe get like just surface level conversation on health and kind of the basic check your blood pressure and your heart, but not really diving into too much. Like there just isn't the time. So you kind of, bucking the system a little bit and saying,
Yeah,
hey,
I did a little bit there. Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
spend a little more time with these people than maybe you want me to.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, it still came out with the right outcome. Um, but noticing how important it is, yeah, just I think it goes back to just that time and connection.
yeah, yeah.
Such an important thing.
Yeah, what I would do, there were times that sometimes you could tell that somebody needed somebody else with them to help. And so I
Yeah.
would say, hey, how's your daughter doing? And say, by the way, why don't you maybe bring her in on the next appointment, to help. And it's the same thing with doctor's appointments, and especially when you're talking with the elderly. My sister is the one that goes with my mom to all of her appointments. Could my mom do it? She's 92, but trust me, she is very well, in a manner of speaking, prepared, to do things. But at the same time, it really does help to have another voice there in case you
Mm,
forgot something, or any other number. Oh, yeah, we need to talk about this or that, or take notes, anything along those lines. And so that was a concept I used even for some of my clients, was to make sure that if their voice was not quite enough, is there another voice that could help them?
that's beautiful.
Oh,
It really is. I mean, I think the hearing, hearing and listening, and you're saying, hey, you know what? If you need another voice, I'm here to listen.
yeah, yeah,
Like I'm really here to be here for you, to listen, create the space and the connection that you need to thrive. I'm curious if that particular piece, one of the questions I always ask everybody is, if there was some piece of the system that you could change,
hmm.
and whether it's the HUD housing system or anything else that you've experienced in life, would that be something you would change, like the time and connection, or would it be something else that you think we could do better as society to help recognize inherent worth?
Yeah, yeah. I would say that it time connection is the most important word.
Yeah.
Time, yes, that time may be, 5 minutes. Time may be a minute. Time might be, 20 minutes. But it's like, how do you make, that connection, with the person? And sometimes I just take and try to find, let's see, I call it the hook words. What are the words that can hook the person into the conversation, that they're going to listen to what you have to say? And if you can get them within a minute to understand what that hook is, then it comes a lot easier to get things done. Some
Mhm.
people can't get it that fast. Some people, they need 20 minutes to get that hook. But it's finding out that connection is actually the most important part of it.
Yeah, I love you said that. So it's like the hook, does that feel like that's finding the hook is a way to like find common ground with the
Yes.
person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It can be anything with the common ground. It can be something that you may know or perceive about the person. And sometimes, like for example, I would, because when you go back to even the saying like, "Hey, how's it going?" Type of thing,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they're kind of like, "Oh yeah," and then just even saying yourself, "You know what? I hear you. My day has been really strange," and then maybe give them a quick snippet of something goofy or whatever, something
Mhm.
that happened in my day. And so then it's like, oh yeah, she understands, what's going on. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's all it takes then is whatever type of connection area that you can make.
Yeah, like hearing them and then relating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I love that. And it sounds like just the space is like you start the connection and then it's like, yeah, then it's a mutual space,
Mhm.
like of giving and receiving, like ideas and information.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I can give you also a quick example how that doesn't always work that easily is,
Right.
that's the other part of it. That's why I said sometimes you have to think about what is going to be your angle because I like to think I'm pretty good at finding those, right? But I met this woman that I'm starting to talk to her, and she just had this face. I mean, you couldn't even tell what was in her brain, at all, and I'm one of those ones that I like to figure out, and that. And I thought it was me. I was really like a little upset by the time I had gotten done with the conversation because, like, wow, I could not make that connection. Well, then a little bit later on, she was the person that had to get up and lead the conversation at a mic. When she was up there at the mic, she was the same. She
Mm,
was, I mean, it was almost like a light bulb went off in my head. It's not me. It's
mhm,
not me. That is her, and that's her personality. She
mhm,
doesn't, for whatever reason, she doesn't know how to smile. She always just has that look, on her face that you just can't tell if she's really happy about something or not. And because I mean, this isn't a room full of people that smiling would have been nice, with it, but she just couldn't. And so then it helped me out actually in the end because then I realized, oh my gosh, it's not me.
mhm,
It's just something that's with how she is. And so it didn't corrode me, as in thinking that there was something wrong with how I was doing things or that. And so then
mhm.
I was okay. I was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting to notice how maybe we have a certain expectation
Yeah.
of how um, we think people should receive us, when we're trying to make that connection. Maybe we have this idea in our mind of what ideally we would like to have, how we would like somebody to respond to us,
Yeah.
and allowing that person to be who they are while we get to be who we are.
Hmm.
Like that's pretty special
Yeah.
um to be able to do that and not place judgment on the other person and not place judgment on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I know the next time I see her that I know how to be able to approach her a little different or whatever. I don't expect to be able to get a smile out of her or anything along those lines, but at
Right.
least I know that my conversation on my end of it will feel more comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. So it's like maintaining your sense of self and your
Yeah,
sense of worth related to that relationship. Um,
exactly.
and again, allowing her to be who she is. And
Yeah.
maybe it's who she is at this stage of life or in this moment. Um, but I think that there's a point of, yeah, you're seeing and recognizing yourself, having awareness of yourself. And then also, yeah, allowing her to be herself. So you're really seeing her as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that's such an important concept. I'm actually reading a book that I'm super excited about, but it's about seeing people deeply. So that really like resonates the way you said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So really connection's important. I think that's probably my biggest takeaway from our time together. Like connection. It's how do we make those connections, allow those connections
Yes.
to
Allow
happen?
those goodness is a good choice of words too. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we can push and try to make them happen. And I think just like you said with this particular example, the connection didn't necessarily happen in the way that maybe you expected or wanted or hoped.
Yeah.
Um, so I think we can initiate connection, and then there also has to be an allowing because that has to be a two-way street.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I can tell you, I was really excited to be able to meet her, you know?
Wow.
And so then, when I did and that happened, at first I was just so let down in so many ways, and it was more for myself, not as in her, type
Sure.
of thing. And so that, yeah, I had to learn that, hey, I'm okay.
Mhm.
This isn't about me, and
Yeah.
so then
That's
it
right.
allowed me to be able to be okay the next time I talk to her. And like I said, then I'll feel comfortable. Who knows? Maybe at some point in time, uh, well, actually, I had somebody I used to work with that way that she would never smile, and everybody knew that. She just would never smile. And it's funny that but it took me about 25 years to get her to do that. And she finally smiled, and I had to go around and tell staff, she smiled at me, you know.
You broke her down.
Yeah, 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 I broke her down, and they're like, "No, you didn't record it, so I don't believe it." But yeah, but the funny thing is like, yes, there was quite a long period of time that she did. She intimidated me, so to speak, because of the
Yeah.
way she would do it. It intimidated me, and there was no reason for me to be felt that way. But
Yeah.
and I think we got so many people in our lives that that's what happens, that we feel intimidated by. And they may not mean to be that way at all, but we're perceiving it, that
Yeah.
way. And
We're
so,
making that mean something about us, right? We're
yeah,
making maybe their standard of who they are means something about us when it really doesn't mean anything about us.
yeah,
And yeah, that's a really interesting thing to notice when we do feel that way,
yeah,
because that's not an unusual, that's very common.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. But I think that's the work, that's some of that work. It's like once we feel stronger in our own inherent worth, we can let those things not mean anything about us.
yes,
We can let them that be, we can still always try to connect, allow the connection, and recognize that that person is having their own human experience um, while we're having ours.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's okay. And I
It
actually
is.
saw her not that long ago. And when I greeted her with a big smile. And she did start to smirk.
I
So I felt pretty good about that.
love it. I love it. Yeah.
It's almost like she stopped herself when she realized that she was doing it for me.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that so much. Well, I have enjoyed our conversation so much, Karen.
I have
We're
to.
in respect of your time. I mean, I think we could talk a whole lot longer, but
We can.
yes, and
Go
I
at
know we
another
have.
time.
Yeah, so I'm just curious if there's any last words of wisdom or anything you would like to share with our audience before we complete today.
The to not use the word wisdom anymore.
Oh, okay.
Well, the reason I say that is I went back to school when I was 25, and I went to school in California, where I lived in a dorm with a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
And they would tell me that I was old and wise, you know. And
Ah,
that, that was my eyeball moment, when they would do that at me. And I proved them wrong when let's just say when some shenanigans would happen in the dorms. Then they would have to come back at me going, Karen, did you do that? And I'd have to just have my smile on my face. So I guess to leave you with that is that wisdom comes in a lot of different ways. And it, it it doesn't necessarily mean we're smarter than anybody else or anything. It just means that we've we've learned to uh, I don't know. I guess the easiest way to say is learn to enjoy, what we've learned over the course of our time here.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that. Like learn through experience,
Yeah,
right? And yeah, yeah, beautiful. Okay, you'll have to help me come up with a word other than wisdom to use in the future.
there you go. There
That's
you
your, give you some homework, Karen.
go. All right. We all need homework these days. Yeah.
Right? Just in a little action step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I want to just appreciate you again for doing this with me. I'm excited for everybody to see our conversation. You have so much, so many just wonderful things to share about your experiences, and I really appreciate everything that you taught me since I've known you.
Thank you very much. You have been a bright spot in my life too. You bring a sense of balance. It's
Oh, thank
like I
you.
like to think of you. No, seriously, you are a sense of balance because sometimes if you see me look with my head cocked, and looking at you, it's because you you end up teaching me something when you don't realize you're doing it. And that I think is something that we all should think about, that there's so many moments that we do that for folks without realizing that we're doing it. And
Oh, I appreciate that.
that's something with that wisdom thing in there and switch that around a little bit.
Yeah, I'm
So,
learning.
yep, you're not as old as me, but hey, you've got some of that in there too.
I appreciate it. Thank you again so much, Karen.
All right.
And to you, the audience, if you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with your friends and subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you again in another episode.